Okay. Hearing none, we will deem the agenda approved. Any announcements from members of council? Councillor Graves.
I would like to say that the hay bale snowmen were taken down over the weekend, and so that means that spring is just around the corner. Really like to thank Kevin Vino of West Northfield. For the second year in a row, Kevin has donated his time to grow, wrap, deliver, assemble, dismantle the hay bale snowman. You know, Kevin Vino, we couldn't have done it without you, so really thank you for doing that for us.
So I look forward to them returning next year. I hope that it'll be an annual fixture in town.
Yes.
I
Hope so.
love them. I think they're great.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can all agree on that. Any other announcements? I will say that the town received a very generous amount of money from the province of Nova Scotia to the tune of $200,000 today for Bridgewater Transit. And Minister Mark Fury was here representing Mr. Glavine, and gave a presentation at the LCLC with the bus in the background. We were going to be outside, but the spring weather didn't cooperate with us. But we heard some testimonials from transit users, from Small World to Kirk, who is in a wheelchair and uses the bus apparently one time for 5 hours, I think he said. But it's stories like that where people who rely on it for independence, when you hear those stories, you can't help but really be emotional about it. I know I was a little emotional about it. I think I stumbled through half of my speech, but really when you hear those stories, you realize there's more to it than just what are your ridership targets, what's the revenue, what's the expense. Those are all important factors, but there's an impact that kind of sits on top of that. At least for me there is, and hearing those stories really kind of, certainly for Kirk, it put a name to a face, or face to a name, and so on behalf of the whole town, I thank the province of Nova Scotia for what is really an investment in our, not just our town, but as I said earlier, in our people. Yeah. And so this will, I don't want to say give us our breathing room, because that's not what it is. It just gives us the ability to extend this for a couple of years to really change the routines of people. Because that, as we've heard, and we'll probably hear from Mackenzie, the biggest barrier is people need reliable public transit. And it's not just that it arrives at the same stop every day at the same time. It's that they know that if they want to sell that second car or that first car, or if they want to start getting in the habit of using the bus, they need to know it's going to be there in June or August or September. So this gets us there. So that was a very exciting announcement. If there's no others, I don't see any members of the public here for delegations. We have the minutes from the February 12th, 2018 regular council meeting. Any questions or comments about those minutes? No? Can I have a motion to approve the...
Make a motion to approve the February 12th, 2018 minutes as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor Brashear, seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Any discussion?
Question.
Any questions being called? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Correspondence for action. Events, Lunenburg County requests for funding for the 2018 ESSO Cup, which of course is April 22nd to 28th at the LCLC. So a reminder for those who watch us on YouTube or wherever we get posted that you can still buy tickets. I think you buy single game, you can buy package for all the games. And it's excellent hockey. And is the final game on TSN? Is it just the finals that are on TSN? I know there's a TSN broadcast towards the end, but
I believe the final game is on TSN, same as the sledge hockey, the championship game.
So that's always kind of exciting and showcase our town. So I think what I'd like to do before we get into the motion is just have the discussion of the debate, so we can kind of get a sense of where we're going with this. Does anyone want to start? Deputy Mayor Tanner.
My only suggestion, I guess, is instead of an actual cash amount, doing an in-kind of the value of the ice rentals, because they're spending obviously a significant amount of money on ice rentals, and we're a partner in the EMS of that in the LCLC. So why wouldn't we do a $5,000 in-kind?
Do we know offhand what the value of the ice rental would be?
I think it's $30,000 in the budget.
Somewhere close to that. It's over a week's time, so.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's
that-
within it's in the scope of that. Yeah, it's an option. Anyone else have some suggestions or?
Explain to me how that works. We have a partner
Yeah.
in the LCLC. Does that mean, isn't that gonna cost us $5,000?
So I guess it would, but we would be paying the LCLC the $5,000 on behalf of the ESSO Cup. Is that what you're suggesting? So instead of giving the money to the ESSO Cup, we're in fact paying the LCLC $5,000, which is, you know,
Yeah.
is that-
Try to figure out how to phrase my response. Yeah, because it's in April, there's going to be some budgeting that's happening at the LCLC currently. And so I would hope that that would be part of the LCLC budget process.
I don't know where it sits in terms of that, because it's right at the, like, it's new fiscal.
Yeah, new fiscal. I just don't know how it works. I love the idea. I just don't know how it works.
I would suggest that, through the mayor to the council, that a donation from the LCLC isn't specifically something that this council can approve. It could request the LCLC board to consider it.
I think it's our donation, though. So you're not suggesting the LCLC donate the ice
No.
time? You're suggesting that we
Donate,
donate the $5,000 worth of ice time?
so it's still $5,000.
It's still $5,000.
Still $5,000, so.
I
But
think.
it's who you're paying, I think, is what you're
Yeah.
saying. So instead of, we're not paying the organizers of the ESSO Cup. I mean, it still comes around to,
You're still gonna write a check for
the LCLC is going to get paid
$5,000.
$5,000, whether it's from their $30,000 of ice rental or $25,000 worth of ice rental that we pay the other $5,000 for. Councilor Thorburn.
Deputy Mayor's right. We show in our facility budget $30,000. That's more than just ice. It's,
Oh,
we
is
got to
it?
put the posters and stuff up and stuff all around the boards, you know. It's around probably 22, 23, maybe even a little bit
Really?
less. And our total budget is $219,000. And the province, we was hoping for 35, and we've only got 20. And we've got in-kind donations from a few organizations, but in-kind donations don't pay the cash bills that we have to pay. But anyway, that's up to council.
So the other option is that this be from the grants to organizations from the next round, because this is next year. This is not in
Supposed
this,
to come out of that?
this is not in this fiscal year for us. So we could take it out of,
Yep.
you could knock the next round down by $5,000 and take it out of that.
I guess that was one of my
Okay.
questions, was that the funding will be coming out of the grants to organization
Oh, okay.
committee, or the funding allowance.
Ms. Kaiser.
It seems to be more pitched as a sponsorship.
Yeah.
than a grant,
Yeah.
But it would come out of next year's sponsorship budget,
Yes.
in my
Either way, they're kind of.
Brian, Councilor McDonald.
If it's coming out of next year's sponsorship budget, does it make more sense to talk about it at budget time so that we know what other things we're trying to balance?
I think we're too late then, because a lot of the stuff is, they put up the advertising a month before.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I, something about that. Councilor McGinnis.
Yeah, I will not be supporting it because mine will be a protest. As you know, I've been lobbying and begging for a marketing levy now for at least 5 years, and I'm being told on a very regular basis that it's imminent. I was told that a year ago. I don't think it's imminent. If we had a marketing levy, we'd have probably anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 in the bank account that we do these types of things. So as long as we give, we will never have a marketing levy. Which every town, city that I know of in Canada and the US have. But for some reason or other, Lunenburg County doesn't want one. And so mine will be strictly a protest vote. I think it's a great project, love to see it happen, but if you're continually looking at the taxpayers to do it, and the people that are gonna benefit from it are not giving to the degree they should be giving. If we had a marketing levy, this would be all looked after, not a problem.
Councillor Graves.
And I also agree with Bill in regards to the marketing levy. The literature indicates that the gas stations are going to benefit, the shopping centers, the restaurants, all these people are benefiting, but where's the business community to stand up and put some money into the pot to make it happen? A lot of the funders are provincial, federal government agencies, and at some point, when does the taxpayer stop paying for events like this? So I won't be supporting it as well. Great thing. I love girls hockey and tend to see it myself, but at some point you got to stop asking the government.
Further discussion?
Question?
We don't have a motion yet.
Well,
I mean, where I struggle with this is I agree with all of you. If we had a marketing levy in place,
Yep.
we wouldn't be having this discussion because
We
it would
wouldn't.
be either referred to that group to hand out the money or not hand out the money. Or it would come to us and we would just say, no, like you have another mechanism. For me though, the struggle is I don't want to punish this event because their timing is not perfect. If 4 months from now we happen to have a marketing levy in place, I don't know if that's going to happen, but if we did, then it'd be a different story. So for me, I'm trying to just keep focused on is the event worthy of sponsorship or not. I was more comfortable when it was a grant to an organization than I am with a sponsorship. Just like I did struggle with the lumberjack sponsorship because, I don't think we should be getting a whole bunch of stuff in return and then we have to figure out who gets it because none of us are going to take free hockey tickets because that's not right. And so I'm kind of twisting in the wind here because I want to support the event, but I understand kind of want some other stuff done. Councillor Vergier first.
I guess further to Deputy Mayor Tanner's comment, where do we stand with that as far as an in-kind donation for the LCLC rink time? Are we not looking at that as an option, or based on the motion that's on the been presented? I guess they're looking for 5,000 in cash. So I guess it's
So I
the
think
wish of council as to.
Yeah, the motion reflects their request, but it
Yes.
doesn't mean we have to follow their request. We
Yeah.
can do some research and see if we can give an in-kind donation. We can make it a hybrid of in-kind, ice time, and something else. It's completely up to council.
Okay.
Councillor Thorburn.
what it does do is bring over $1 million with the economic development, a spike here for that weekend. Every motel is full, every restaurant is full, every service station is full. There's no doubt about it. And whether you give $5,000 to ice time or if you give the $5,000 in cash, it's still $5,000.
Yeah.
It's just how you present it. And I don't see an issue with it.
My thought of doing the in-kind is you're in essence paying yourself. And you'll give $5,000 of value, but you'll actually cost yourself, I don't know, whatever the margin is of the LCLC, $2,500, let's say, of actual ice cost.
Yeah, so in the end, for the ESSO Cup, they receive the same amount.
Regardless,
Right.
it's still gonna
Yeah.
do the 5,000 to the
Yeah,
line in a
They
budget.
do, but if I understand the CAO, it has to go through the board for approval for that.
Well, I don't know
Does it?
if we give, like, we're literally going to pay the LCLC
If you're paying them
$5,000, right? Because that's what the in-kind is. We're
Yeah.
going to eat $5,000 as a town of Bridgewater, I think is your suggestion.
Yes.
But because we own the facility, it doesn't cost us $5,000.
Right.
The value's
Does
the
that
same.
make sense? I'm still trying to work it out in my mind.
So
Doesn't make sense.
we're
Yeah,
still
'cause
going
they'll
to
do the
have,
same
regardless
thing.
whether we write a check to the LCLC for $5,000 or write a check to the ESSO Cup, they're asking for $5,000. The LCLC's presented them a bill for the facility rental, and the in-kind contribution that we're looking at making is simply paying the LCLC directly instead of going through the ESSO Cup. So
Yeah.
I'm not following how that would be a savings. They still
Yeah.
have $30,000
Still
bill.
gonna
Makes no
be the
sense.
same.
No.
Councillor McDonald.
If we are working with the LCLC to cover X number of hours of ice time at cost, then it's a savings to one of us, which is ultimately us. If we just pay for the ice time with their costs and profit all worked into it, then what our CAO is saying is absolutely right. If we're paying kind of the at cost for the ice hours, then I don't know if we can do that, but
It's gonna cost you $5,000.
Councillor McGinnis.
Yeah. You say that maybe the marketing levy is 3 or 4 months away? Is that what I understood you to say?
That wouldn't be possible because it's an
No,
act of
but is-
legislature.
Is there a realistic possibility we'll have a marketing levy within the next year?
Yes, maybe. That'd be,
I was told this a year ago. So there is actual movement, there is support for the marketing levy?
We're in a bit of a bind in what we could.
Okay, but that's enough for me.
Fair to say conversations have taken place.
yes, I mean, yes. There's been further investigation of that file. That would require an intermunicipal agreement.
Wonderful.
The other thing I'll say is, every time Queens announces a concert where they make an investment because they pay into these things,
Yes.
we sit here and say, "Ah, why not here? Why not here?" Well, they make an investment. They don't always make money on their concerts. But the reality is they do it because they know that the economic impact is every hotel is full, every restaurant is full. So that model it's what we've done in the past, what we did with Sledge, it's what we did with the 55+ games. So we know that there's an economic impact, and our job is to do what we can to have an economic impact in the community. You're right, Councillor Gregory. So at some point, local businesses, your restaurant is full because of these events. It would be awful nice if you would step up and sponsor it, knowing that there's a payback. But to me, the payback is healthy businesses in our town that are benefiting from $1 million worth of economic impact for 1 week. Is that worth $5,000? That's I think where we need to wrap our heads around. If we've established that, whether it's in kind or we just cut a check, it's still $5,000. I think at the end of the day, the question around this table has to be, is the economic impact that will be realized from the SO Cup worth $5,000? And are you comfortable with the taxpayer in front of you saying, yes, I voted this way, or yes, I voted that way? That's what it comes down to me. Then we have to figure out where it comes from, whether it's grants or sponsorship.
And not to say they've requested a sponsorship. If you want it to be a grant, then it can be a grant. I guess you just don't get the things in return that they're offering, the acknowledgement and all that stuff.
I think in Lunenburg County, there are about, just in the greater Bridgewater area, there are 40 restaurants. There's about 7 or 8 gas stations. There's 3 or 4 or 5 different shopping areas. There's a lot of people that benefit from a lot of these events, and I'm totally supportive of the events. But at some point, the business community really has to step up and say, when I owned my store, if there was something that was going to benefit me, of course I'd put money into it. It wasn't a lot of money, a couple $100, but it's money. And I think people, sometimes the business community just has to kind of step up and take a little bit of responsibility. You know, in the long run, it's only going to be better for all of us, right? But for organizations to constantly come after the government as if we're going to solve all their problems, I just don't know if that's the right approach. And, you know, we've been talking about this, not only this council, but the previous council, how this is the last one we're going to fund, and then we fund another, and we fund another, and we fund another, and so on and so forth. But at some point, we got to start, if we say we're gonna be, that's the last one, then it's gotta be the last one. I think I have total appreciation for the organizers. I know they're all volunteers. I think it's a great thing, but at some point, there has to be a way of mobilizing the business community. And when they are mobilized, they'll find out that working together is better for all, better for them, when they work together, so they can bring in more stuff. And the marketing levy, we need the marketing levy, absolutely. You know, $60,000 to $80,000 to $90,000 per year, have a pool of money that the business community or the events committee can draw upon to bring even more people into Bridgewater and area. But it's not the government's responsibility as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Thorburn.
Just one last comment. I think, Michael, I've seen your emails going through, and there is, where this is a national event, there are some national sponsors where you got to be careful who you can get to sponsor because of conflict. And I think there was quite an enormous list of people that they're trying to get sponsor this event.
Yeah.
I think the unfortunate part may be that we had a change in lead after we started down this road, and we have a new chair. So things are a little bit, this stuff should have been done a month ago. But that tournament is next month. So, you know, we're trying to put this together to make it happen, so.
What is council's wish?
Someone should make a motion.
Well, someone has to make a motion in order to get it on the table.
I'll make the motion to get it started then. I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve on a budget expenditure of $5,000 gold level sponsorship in support of the 2018 SO Cup Challenge as requested in the letter from Events Lunenburg County document 18-033.
Is there a seconder? Put that on the floor.
Second that.
Deputy Tanner. Discussion? We've had some.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions for clarification? So that comes out of this year's or next year's sponsorship?
I would say it will depend on when we write the check,
Mm-hmm.
even though the event is
In my
next
view,
year.
it would be, and when I saw this, assuming it was April, I assumed it's next year's budget. So it would go against your pre-approving $5,000, was the way I assumed this.
Okay. Councillor Thorburn?
Do we have any extra money in their budget left over from the sponsorship? Grants to organizations this year? If there's $5,000 left over this year, then it makes sense it would come out of this year's budget.
So we'll just see if we have that. No pressure.
No, and I'd add that this makes it a little bit, this bit of a challenge for staff where it's correspondence too, so we haven't really looked at it to advise where it should come from or how it fits. So we are looking on the fly here with this correspondence.
Councillor McGinnis?
Yeah, I'm going from memory, but I believe grants to organizations have, I think, around at least $4,000 left. That the portion or most of it could come out of.
So grants to organizations has actually about 3,000 left. Just let me find sponsorships here. Although we had that big one this year. Yeah, about 2,500 left in sponsorships.
Here you go.
That's a little,
And if council did want it to come out of this year's budget, if it, that would be fine. If it didn't fit within the rules, we would transfer it to reserve at year end and then, you know, pay it out of reserve next year, so.
thoughts on that?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, question's been called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Did you get that? Good discussion.
Great discussion.
Guess we just kind of put the other municipal units on notice that we want a marketing levy.
Well, we've
They
done
know
that
where that
stuff.
vote's gonna be, in town of Bridgewater, I think. And I think it's important to note, like, we would not be having this discussion. The taxpayer wouldn't be having us have this discussion if we had a marketing levy in place.
And I just to reiterate, the marketing levy is paid for by people who don't live in this area. They usually are visiting our area.
Yeah.
That's right. And so people aren't taking ownership. The business community's not taking ownership of the opportunity. That's,
Yeah, good discussion. I like that. I know it's long, but when you look around, you see some councils that don't have that interaction. This is good. Good for people in town. Reports and recommendations, transit system operations. And we have Mackenzie is here to give a presentation on transit. And of course, we did have our wonderful announcement today. So, good timing. Type in the secret password so we can all see it on the screen.
subway will be packed.
It's password.
One,
But you know what, even if this was a marketing levy, it'll still come to us. It'll just be another pot of money. We're still gonna get the request. So we're gonna either have to put our foot down or not.
right.
Thank you. So I'm just doing a bit of a brief update on Bridgewater Transit. So just a few things I'll go through is the ridership, the impact of service we've been hearing so far, the evaluation that we are doing right now, a bit about budget and considerations for the future permanent service. Recommendation is an oversight, as this is just an update. And so for ridership, you've heard about the 3 weeks of free service before, which we've had over 2,000 riders during that time. And to date, we've had over 6,700 in the past 5 months. The daily average, including the free weeks, was 61 people a day. And our daily average, excluding those weeks, has actually gone up in the last little while, and it's 55 people a day. We had a great day last week and this week, where you've had 135 people on one day and 127 just a couple days ago as well. So 13% of our riders are 5 and under, from which we're receiving no revenue. 60% are adults or seniors paying cash. 10% are youth and students paying cash. And 16% are using the 10 and 30 ride passes, which has gone up since the new year. We've been selling more of those. And 1% of the riders are using the Hotspot app. So as Mayor Mitchell said, we've been hearing a lot of positive stories about how the service has been impacting people, and I'll just touch on a couple things that we've been hearing about the residents' connection to the town, their independence, their social connectedness, and some opportunities they've had since the bus has launched. And I'm going to go through a few different mini versions of stories from quotes that we've had from the surveys that we've conducted. And so in regards to connection to the town, this user said that they were able to stop at the Giant Tiger Complex during December, and they were able to take the bus there. They had been there rarely because they weren't able to get there before the bus. As for independence, this person stated, "The bus is an excellent alternative when I can't walk or my husband isn't available to drive me. I cannot drive due to a visual impairment, so having the bus available is great." And someone else stated that, "I believe it is a great service to the town. It allows me more independence as I do not have to rely on others to get to my appointments or run my errands." And in regards to social connectedness, someone stated, "I have a friend with special needs who loves to ride the bus. This is something that we do. He gets great enjoyment from, and it fits in his budget." As for opportunities that people have been able to take, someone stated they work in a daycare and they're now able to take the kids skating again, to the library and to the field house. Someone else stated, "I take the bus every morning to go to work and enjoy my chats with all the drivers. Without this service, I would be walking 45 minutes to get to work or pay a much higher fare for a taxi." And this person usually walks home at the end of the day as well. And someone else said that instead of paying more and having to rely on a taxi, the bus has been the most reliable form of transportation I've taken since my son has been born. We've heard a little bit of negative feedback throughout this process as well, through the surveys. Many people have said that the bus should go to exit 12 up to the Walmart and Staples complex. Others have stated there should be a second bus, so either going the opposite way as the current one does right now, or going every half an hour to allow for a more frequent service. Some people have stated that the bus should travel into more residential areas. We've heard specific ones such as LaHave Heights or Marie Avenue, or some places that they wish the bus would go directly to. And others have stated that the schedule should be extended, some specifically on the weekends, as they say they still work longer hours and the bus doesn't quite accommodate their schedules. And we are working on an evaluation right now with a group of second-year master's students from the Dalhousie School of Planning. They're collecting qualitative and quantitative data from us and from their own work, and they're analyzing that. Hopefully by the end of March, we'll be receiving a report from them to hear their findings. And their goals are to assess the success of the pilot transit system, see if it's connecting residents to local services and jobs, and to see if it's contributing to environmental sustainability. And to do this, they're looking at various valuation tools. So we've provided them with ridership data that the bus drivers are collecting every day. They're looking at budget information, the community surveys, one that was launched in the fall and another that was launched just in February. Focus groups, those two that were held on February 14th at the LCLC. They're looking at passenger surveys, which were brief surveys that were on the bus that people could fill out talking about the purpose of their trip. And also a GPS-based reliability tracking app that one of them has created. So they're looking at the reliability of the service in that way. And a little bit about the budget. So the 6-month pilot project is estimated at $16,000 under budget. And if we were to do a pilot project service continued for another 12 months, it's budgeted to be $73,000 more than the 6-month pilot. And please note that that is a correction from a typo in the report. And it's estimated in total that with an additional 12 months of the pilot project, it would be $253,000 with a total revenue of $41,000, and that would be coming mostly from advertising and also from the fare box as well. And I'll just leave you with a few considerations if we were to turn this into a future permanent service. So the cost of labor would be increasing because the current contracts are casual, so they do not include benefits or pension. And a part-time transit supervisor would be required as well to help work with the system. And in total, those together would be approximately $143,000. We would require a permanent space for buses at the Public Works facility rather than using the space at the fire hall that we use right now. And that would be about $300,000. And as we know, when we receive them from Halifax, the buses are aging assets. So to turn this into a permanent service, a new bus would be required, and that would be about $200,000. So I wanted to leave you with a few numbers, and yeah, let me know if you have some questions. I am going to be directing some of them, probably to Larry, but I can answer some as well.
Questions? Oh yeah, do you want to give a preamble, because we're not...
So originally, when we prepared this report, this presentation, or through the mayor to council, when we originally prepared this report and presentation, we had intended to ask for direction to extend the pilot until June to get us through the budget process, because the pilot project originally was scheduled to finish March 31st. With this morning's announcement of the $200,000 investment from the province of Nova Scotia, we are waiting to see the contribution agreement, which will come back to council for approval. And instead of cobbling together a motion that may not fit the contribution agreement, we expect to have this week, and we'll have a contribution agreement and motion back for council likely on March 12th. So we don't have a motion in front of you today for that, but we wanted to continue with the presentation and answer any of council's discussions.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Mackenzie, the two spikes this week and last, what caused them, do you know?
Not entirely, no.
Okay.
There was a bunch of people on the bus at the same time as well. Both of those days there were daycare groups, but those are the usual groups that usually go Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I know at the same time there were groups of large groups of adults on at the same time. We had 1 hour, I think, with 10, or I think it was like a group of 10 or something that came on. So I'm not exactly sure the reasons, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
The hotspot app there's a cost for that. I can't remember, it's to us or to the consumer?
It's to the consumer, so
Okay,
it's free for us, so it's $2 a month
Okay.
if people wanted to get it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's a good plug for the hotspot app, because you can use it for parking and the bus, and parking in Halifax, because I use it both places. So. You look like you have a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the $300,000 for at Public Works?
Larry?
Basically,
Keep talking to your microphone, please, Mr. Mayor.
sorry.
I want to hear.
Basically, it's an indoor facility that would house up to 2 buses, an office, and potentially like a staff room, something very basic.
So this is new construction?
It would be.
Okay.
Could we not get the buses in the old arena, or is that just not feasible?
Not currently the way it is. The doors wouldn't accommodate it.
Okay. Any more questions? So in a couple of weeks, we'll have more information from the province, just in terms of how that contribution agreement is worded, which will allow us to figure out a path forward. Sorry, Councillor Fisher.
Just have one question, based on, maybe can't answer this, based on the bus and the expected life expectancy based on the kilometer usage that each bus has now. How much time does that give us? I'm not sure if I know what the kilometer usage is on them.
I'm certainly, maintenance costs is a concern. We are seeing increased maintenance this time of year. It seems like we're experiencing some electrical issues, probably related to the wet weather and the salt use. But the capital budget does propose up to 2 new buses. I'm not sure if the timing's decided
Okay,
at this time.
all right.
Councillor Graves.
Just in regards to the bus garage, assuming everything works out, and I'm certainly hopeful it will, when do you anticipate building that garage? What budget year? You know?
It would largely depend on council's decision.
Yeah, no, I get
to
that.
make it permanent
Yeah.
and when that would be. So again, it's depending on council's decision.
I guess further to, well, I'll let you speak. Maybe that's my question.
Yeah, you might too. So there's future years capitals items contemplated. I would say very clearly, these would be the type of things that we'd be targeting federal infrastructure funding for. So we'd be looking for those sort of programs, and another announcement like we had today before we saw a small bus garage or a new bus or two. So I was hoping that might help.
Yeah, so I was just going to say the same thing. While no level of government funds public transit operations, there is money available for capital, whether it's a new bus or bus stops, bus shelters. I'm assuming bus shelters would include people and buses, but there is capital money out there. Councilor McGinnis.
Yeah, new bus. What size bus would be buying? One like we have now, or a smaller one?
That's kind of, we're looking at those options just based on the ridership, and it'll be, it's important, I think, to look at ridership in the other months of the year that we haven't seen yet. So right now, we do have those days where we have 32 people on the bus at the same time, and it's been really nice to see those opportunities for like the daycare students to go on all at once, so we wouldn't want to, well, I shouldn't say we, but there are opportunities for those large groups to go on with this size bus, but I think it would be based on looking at those ridership numbers and how often things like that happen.
And I think that, Councilor Fisher, do you remember how much the bus was at the FCM we saw? One of the reasons HRM divested itself of these buses is because they replaced them all with low floor,
Yeah.
so the driver doesn't have to get out,
Yeah.
go around. So I think even if you get a bus this size, it looks like a stubby, short city bus.
Mm.
But I think it was the same passengers, and maybe it was 40 people.
It was around there, yeah, the high 30s, I would say.
But it was low.
Yeah, low profile.
So what's our current bus?
32 plus standing passengers?
Councilor McDonald.
So the Social Regional School Board operates a number of buses. I noticed they aren't all stored inside. Is there a reason that that our buses would need to be stored inside? Or is it just, or the garage is actually for maintenance and working on them? Or is it storage?
A combination of both. We've been pretty fortunate this winter with the lack of snow, so
Mhm.
clearing the snow off the top could be an issue for the driver before taking the bus on the route. But also, longevity, storing them inside out of the weather certainly would, help keep them in good condition as well.
Thinking back to Councillor Graves' question about the space for the bus, let's assume that this goes ahead and the time comes when we make this a permanent system, recognizing that you need that information, that commitment from council. Is it the first motion is council says we're going to make the transit system permanent, and the second one is we need to immediately build a bus shelter? Or is it, okay, now that you've done this, we have a few years to work our way towards it? It's the latter?
I would suggest a phased-in approach.
Okay. So it's not like a operational imperative that we don't have a bus shelter right now? Okay. Yeah, that's good. Any more questions, discussion?
It's exciting.
Yeah, so this will come back in a couple of weeks, and we can see where we're going to take it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Pre-budget approval, thank you, Mackenzie. Pre-budget approval of 2018-19 budgets. Ms. Kaiser, did you want to speak
There's
to
just
that?
a few items on the list, the street line painting on the operating side, and a couple of capital projects, pump station number 10 replacement, and Dominion Street Phase 3 Queen to Churchill. There will also, on the 26th, be coming a pre-approval for a police car as well, but the police commission isn't till March 1st, so,
Today's 26th.
March 1st.
Oh,
Oh, sorry,
The-
the next meeting.
The
No, the
12th.
26th of March, actually,
Okay.
because the rest, that's when the rest.
okay. Sorry. Am I going missing, please? Okay. Any questions on that? Councilor McDonald?
I may be incorrect, but I think last year, Canada Day had a pre-budget approval so that they could put payments on, deposits, on some items that they needed to. Was there any mention of them?
They already have that, actually. It was
Oh, they did.
pre-approved earlier.
Oh, okay. I was there, right?
It might have actually been the meeting that you were ill.
Okay, that one, that was the one, yeah.
We don't have a motion yet, but I do have a question on one of the items that we want to pre-approve.
Okay. Do you want to ask your question?
Well, okay, we don't have a motion yet. I want to talk about Dominion Street.
Do you want to put the motion on the floor first, or do you want to? It's up to
Well,
you.
I may be voting against it, but I don't mind putting it on.
Well, I'll let you ask your question before.
Well, no, I'm just wondering, obviously PSC are going to tear the street up, are they? This year? That's why we're doing Dominion Street?
It would be in combination with the work
Yes.
the PSC would do.
They
yes.
have to do that work.
Yes.
I have the 2017-18 budget in front of me, and that also has the 2018-19 capital that we had in there for last year. And there's some other capital projects in there that I'm not sure they're going to be in there. Is this the only major event this year?
Currently, capital budget is in draft form, and yes, this is the more significant infrastructure, civil works project for us this year. yeah.
Like the one that was in there was the High Street upgrade. Is that going to be in the budget
It's not currently shown in our draft
for
budget.
18-19?
Correct.
So this will probably be the only one that I can see. If we go with that budget.
Okay. Someone prepared to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Frazier?
Yes, Your Worship, that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Director of Finance and pre-approve capital projects in the amount of $690,000, pump station number 10 replacement and Dominion Street Phase 3 Queen to Churchill, and operating budgets totaling $44,000, street line painting as outlined in document 18-031.
A seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Tanner, discussion? I have a question that's, unrelated to this, but kind of as we're talking about paving and things like that. We, like every community in this country that's facing the winter that we are, with water getting into the cracks, and then at night freezing and popping up the pavement, are we prepared for what I mean, it looks like an obvious need for increased pavement management?
That would be a decision of council. Staff would be looking to put the same level of effort in the budget as last year. But again, I guess we haven't finalized our capital budget, so there may be opportunity to make changes.
I'm just wondering, further to that, are there other projects that perhaps, not a fan of putting off projects, but I also look at the conditions of the road, and again, drive around the province before everyone emails us and says, the roads are bad here, they're everywhere. Are there other projects that you could defer in order to put more money into the budget for pavement management?
It's a possibility if that's the way council would like staff to look at that, as you know, looking at pavement management, increasing pavement management as a priority, we could certainly look at that.
Councillor McGinnis?
Well, the reason why I asked you about Dominion Street and the project we just are about to pre-approve is one of the streets that I'm really concerned about is a portion of Empire Street. It is not in good repair. And I don't know if that's a major project or is that pavement management or is that?
It would be major.
Yeah,
We're looking at underground infrastructure rebuild.
Yeah. And that's why I asked how important Dominion Street is, because Empire is not in good shape.
Oh, in the past, one of council's interest was to finish Dominion. Years ago, it was a four-phased approach. We're at phase 2, or finished phase 2, going into phase 3. Of course, the year after would be Queen to King, and then that complete street would be done, including underground infrastructure. Empire's listed in the budget, but again, priorities may change a bit from year to year.
Councillor Thorburn?
Larry, when we started that, I remember that the water part of that project wasn't required by somebody at that day. And then after we got it done, they decided that it did have to be done. I'm just wondering where it's $390,000, if we could put that in a paving and just defer that another year. Does it have to be done next year?
It's fitting in with that four-phased approach that we've talked to council about. You know, at the time, when we did the work to the inflow or the separation of the storm and sanitary, it didn't coincide with the PSC work. So it got done at a later date, and then, you know, we're at the stage now where we're looking at rebuilding the entire street and all the underground infrastructure be done. It's been on our radar, but that's not to say that if other priorities come up that we may not be able to switch it, you know, a year or something. It's a possibility. But looking at our draft capital budget right now, that seems to fit in the picture for both PSC and the town.
I'm just concerned where a lot of our streets are in desperate need of repair. We've been cutting holes and patching, and at some point in time, we're not putting near enough money into paving, and it has to come to a crisis sometime where we have to take drastic measures to get some of this work done, and I'm not sure what it is.
Any further discussion? I think we know we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on pavement management, but again, I can't stress it enough, because I'm sure you all get the same kind of emails and phone calls I get, but the reality is, as soon as you leave the town boundary, you're still faced with the same condition of roads. I was down in Yarmouth this weekend, and there's a section of the 103 where they've put the rumble strips in the middle, but you can't actually see the line that's painted because the pavement has come up so bad that there's no physical center line painted on the highway for maybe 5 kilometers. That's how much it's been torn up. It's nobody's fault, it's just the weather we've had.
Just one more question. Well, if you want to see bad streets, you drive through New Minas. It's not pretty. I have here the projection that was done last year for 18-19, and the amount of capital work done is considerably less than what we have done this previous year. Is what we're preparing now close to what was presented to us last year? Is there,
We're working
it'll be close to that,
working towards trying to get the total about the same.
but it would, like.
But there might be some different projects.
Yeah, we projected last year for 2018-19 that we spend $3.3 million. This past year, we spent over $6.
Yeah, that was because of the big infrastructure projects.
exactly.
Like the King Street one was
Yeah,
over
exactly.
$2 million.
But if it's going to be in that same area, do you think, the 3.3?
In that 3.3
Yeah,
is
okay,
what we're
great.
aiming for.
Okay, Councillor Thorburn?
Just one more question, Larry. On that, is that number, that $390,000, is that a firm price?
No.
It would be based on the work that we did previously for the other phases, but not include the PSC water main portion.
Yeah, but can some of that be gas tax funded? Because I see it's all coming out of debt financing.
It could be, but it's all in the, we only have so much gas tax funding, so wherever it gets allocated, at the end of the day, you just add up all the funding sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask the question because
So
it
if
comes
that
in
was, if it was to come out of gas tax, then something else would be debt financed, so that it all adds up.
I won't prolong this. That's why I asked about High Street.
Yeah.
High Street was $710,000, 350 of which is coming from gas tax. If we weren't going to do High Street, that gas tax should be moved down to the Main Street.
Yeah, it could be placed somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Great.
okay, no.
Let's go with that. Any more questions? There's a motion on the floor. Ready for it?
Questions?
Being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Building permit report, January 2018. Any questions on that? No?
It's almost doubled over the previous year.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, things are, things continue to look good.
Must be because of the new CAO.
Okay. Don't let that go to your head. Okay, well, if you have any questions, you can reach out to Mr. Feener. Mortgage listing fee and revisions to policy 89 fees. Mrs. Kaiser.
So this mortgage listing fee is something that a number of municipalities have in place. And as you can see in the report, I think of the 16 that we got responses from, 10 of them had that. It's a fee per property, per billing. And, you know, it ranges, I think, from 6 to 18 or something like that, and most being at 10. So we're suggesting that, you know, this is a very common practice, and what happens is that the banks get a bill each time we do a billing to process the mortgage listings.
Councilor Graves first.
So does the $10 cover the cost of providing the service to the banks?
That would be hard to say.
Best guess?
I
I read you do up to 200.
Yeah, that's one bank.
Oh,
So
that's
I'd have
one
to
bank.
have a look at, one bank is up to 200.
Okay.
But, you know, we could take a look if you want.
Bingo. So I guess the question, because, you know, you could go to 18 if there's people already doing 18.
Yeah, and I think it's Halifax maybe that's doing 18, so,
Mhm.
you know, ones that are like size to ours, we're around 10, but.
Yeah. I have no
Certainly,
problem
it's up to council.
with the money, but, you know, if it's not covering the cost and for an extra $4 it is, then.
It's really hard to say, because it depends on what difficulties they have with the listings when they come in. You know, if everything matches up, then it's pretty smooth, but if
But-
things don't match up.
But
then
it's
it
been
can be quite a bit of
happening
work.
last year and the year before and the year before.
Yeah,
So at least
so
you have
we
a
could look
history.
into that. I haven't, but we
Yeah.
could look into it.
Okay, just curious.
Councilor McGinnis.
My question's along the same lines as Councillor Graves. I can't believe it's not $20 at least. I mean, we're talking banks here. Between all of them, they made $6 billion last year.
You look like you want to.
Yeah, I just, so, again, we're happy to move fees to the will of council. The recommendation is based on the review of other municipalities, picking what we think is is reasonable, but we'd be happy to reassess that and bring that back for future consideration.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
I just wonder if the banks, when they discuss these kinds of service fees that they're implying on, or pushing towards us, if they talk about how we should keep them low and not, not cover our costs and so on. I'm with everybody. I think charge $20 for this. I mean, I have to believe it takes that much time.
I can't believe it doesn't.
Councilor Frazier.
Yeah, I'm in favor of, ensuring that staff time is covered when you look at the number of accounts that they have to do per, and this is twice a year, I would assume, with the tax bills. So, yeah, I'm in favor of us charging a fee.
And the fee is per account, per.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's, staff direction is done at the will of council, so if someone wants to put a motion on the floor, if they've got a motion there in the first one, and if you want to throw a number, if you want to put $10 there, or $18, or whatever it is that you want, someone makes the motion, we can discuss it and debate it.
I move Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve a fee of $20 per tax account per billing for the provision of tax information to financial institutions in relation to the payment of tax accounts in which they have a mortgage interest.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Discussion.
I don't think 20 is exorbitant at all. I'm sure that's not covering our time.
But that is more than HRM charges?
I
think that
believe,
you said
the
18.
highest one was 18.
Well, we can be a trendsetter.
There you go.
Yeah. New leader of the pack.
It
I
does
have no
become
problem.
difficult to feel sorry for a bank. Yeah.
Question?
And the question's being called.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. There's another motion there. If someone's prepared to make that motion?
Move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the amended Policy 89 fees revised to include a mortgage listing fee as proposed in document 18-034, and that the revised Policy 89 be implemented as policy for the Town of Bridgewater effective immediately.
Seconder?
Second.
Councilor Thorburn, any discussion on that?
Nope.
No, hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Next item, proposed new policy, land sales. Who is someone speaking to that? Oh, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Staff are recommending approval of the land sales policy. It was drafted to guide process and negotiations with prospective buyers, specifically in the or for select town-owned lands in the Glen Allen Drive area. To do so, staff recommend that council declare those Glen Allen Drive area lands and select town-owned business park lands as surplus. And as far as the business park is concerned, it's recommended that council direct staff to use the RFP process to secure the services of real estate professionals. In all cases, those land transactions, every land transaction will be brought to council for approval. So I can attempt to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions from members of council?
So
Councilor
every
Hicks?
parcel of land will come to council for approval?
That's what's being
Every
recommended.
parcel land sale? Is that how it works?
That was my question. It seems that
No, I think
Yeah,
that's
so
what
if somebody misses the deadline, then they gotta wait another 2 weeks for a council meeting, and if it happens during the summer, they have to wait a month for a land sale? Is that how, am I understanding that right?
It'd be a requirement to, it's in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, that council needs to approve those land transactions. That's my understanding.
Through council, through the mayor to council, this was actually something that we went back and forth with legal services on, trying to seek a way to delegate that authority to the CAO so that I could sign off on it. We didn't satisfactorily reach that. We wanted to bring this policy forward. We would like to revisit the opportunity to be quicker on the approval of real estate purchase, particularly in Glen Allen. Those should be basically listed, and we agree with that. But I believe we'd have to do some more work with regards to a policy around delegating authority or something. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So there's no way to create some kind of schedule that if a parcel of land is sold to Glen Allen for between this range and this range, it can be dealt with by the CAO, and if it falls without that, then it's a special request to council. Because I agree with you, if you're buying because you want to build,
Yeah, you want to build.
and you've just missed the summer council meeting in July, I mean, we could call it a special meeting, but
Well, you wouldn't have to, that's an easy thing to, we could do an electronic vote, couldn't we?
can we is the question.
Well, through the mayor to council, that's what we'd be looking to do.
Yeah.
We would call and give the due notice of a couple of days, whatever's required, and get your approval on a land sale. We would like to continue to investigate to delegating that authority so that
Sure.
that can
Sure.
move, but
Sure.
we needed to move something in place so that we can start working these lands.
Okay.
And just one question. And all land sales are gonna be at market value.
That's right,
They
they
have to
have to
be.
be.
Have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We take it regardless.
Okay.
Okay, is someone prepared to put a motion on the floor, please?
Wait, worship. I would move that town council for the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff and adopt the proposed land sales Glen Allen policy as presented in document 18-035 as policy 91 for the town of Bridgewater.
Seconder, Councilor McDonald, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, motion is carried. Councilor Thorburn, would you care to make the next motion?
This is the next motion. Where's that? Get up here.
Or someone else got it?
Okay, I got it here now. The town council for the town of Bridgewater declares that the Glen Allen and Bridgewater Business Park lands, as outlined in attachment C of document 18-035, are no longer required for the purposes of the municipality as per section 15(5)(c) of the Municipal Government Act.
Did we just do that?
what did we just vote on?
You did the second one
We did the
first.
second
We
one
did the second one
first.
first. Oh, okay.
Seconder,
Second.
Councilor Frazier. All those in favor? Those opposed, motion is carried. All right. Someone prepared to read the third motion?
I must read, I'm
All
gonna.
right, go for it.
The town council for the town of Bridgewater directs staff to use a request for proposal process to obtain a professional realty company to sell Bridgewater Business Park lands.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Frazier, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, motion is carried. There you go.
There you go.
Wastewater infrastructure funding approval. Mr. Feener.
Staff seek a proposal from CBCL Limited to expand their scope of work to include the evaluation, selection, and design of a belt filter press replacement with the provision for tender and construction services. Staff felt this process would be beneficial to reduce timelines and realize cost savings by combining the work with the anaerobic digester cover work. CBCL Limited provided a cost of $48,108, plus an additional expense for the provisional work of $20,125, excluding HST. In efforts to keep this project within the timelines outlined in the funding requirements, staff are recommending that council approve the expansion of the scope of work to CBCL Limited.
Any questions? Councilor Graves?
So this is a big project, though. This is like over $1 million, isn't it? Like
It's-
combined?
Correct. It's two components,
Yep.
one being the cover and the other one being the belt filter press.
Wow. Okay. And that's gonna happen once, the study will take how long?
Well, this was more an evaluation and more importantly, the design.
Design, yeah.
We have tight timelines, potentially for the funding to get this work completed by March 2019.
Mhm.
So because we are going to do the work with the cover and take the system offline, we want to do the two components at the same time, preferably, I'll say in the dry season,
Yeah.
toward fall. So that's the intent, is to combine these two components together.
So this is happening September?
We hope so.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? I always have an observation, and Councilor McGinnis, you'll appreciate this, because it was seemed to happen a lot years ago, where the town of Bridgewater, I find that we're progressive and items like this come up and we have to fix it.
Yeah.
Where other municipalities, I won't name names, but let's say they have a harbor that starts to smell, and they just sit there and they sit back and they wait, knowing that another level of government's gonna say, well, you have to do something. We'll give you $1 million. And I'm not suggesting we don't go ahead with this, but I always feel like we want to be good stewards of the environment. We want to be proactive. We want to repair things before we have big issues. And yet, other municipalities just sit back knowing that they're going to get what is essentially a bailout for waiting as long as they possibly can. And the same example I'm thinking of in my head, there's been more than one project for the same issue, different ends of the line, if you will, where they received millions of dollars of funding because they just waited and waited and waited, and the federal government said, we're getting complaints from your constituents, so we'll fix it. And at the end of the day, who got the last laugh? And so, again, I'm not suggesting let's wait until something breaks and the federal government swoops in, but I feel if we're going to be proactive, we should be proactive with the federal government, and that's what we should be going after and saying, we're going to fix this so that you don't have to get these calls from people, so that this isn't going to break or we're not going to have an issue. But we should be rewarded for that good stewardship instead of punished. Do you know what I mean? You know who I'm talking about.
I know
So
exactly what you're talking about.
It happens all the time, and I just think we're being punished for being ahead of the curve and for having staff that see a problem and realize we need to fix it, so. Councilor
The
McDonald.
fact that the town of Bridgewater is making such bold moves around energy and environment in general, you know, it creates a reputation. And on the opposite end, if, you know, things start happening to our wastewater treatment plant and we kind of get behind the 8 ball, which, you know, everyone is, and we're doing our very best to be proactive about things, but that also creates a reputation. So all of the good that they're helping us accomplish can be completely negated by, you know, one bad thing in the public eye. So, you know, it would really make sense for them to help on a number of things rather than here's one good one that will cover the bad one.
So, just all that to say, I hope that we're very aggressive and more proactive with our requests for funding, and that it becomes a reward, not a punishment.
Yes.
Pushy even.
Pushy, I don't mind being pushy. Someone prepared to put a motion on the floor. Councilor Graves.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendations of staff and approve the expansion of CBCL limited scope for the anaerobic digester cover design project to include the evaluation, selection, and design of the belt filter press replacement at a cost of $48,108, excluding HST, $50,169.91 net HST, and the provisional services at a cost of $20,125, excluding HST, $20,987.56 net HST, contingent on the award of clean water and wastewater funding.
Seconder? Deputy Mayor Tanner, further discussion?
That's got to get done.
Hearing none? Oh, yep.
What's the timeline horizon on that facility over there to have to be completely replaced? If you had to guess, 10 years, 5 years?
I wouldn't say that it would be completely
Sure.
replaced. It will be component by component.
Okay.
And when it was designed such that other expansions could happen, so there's space and things were put in place for those. So I wouldn't suggest that the facility itself would be completely
I guess
replaced at one.
As a town, we continue to grow, and I assume put more pressure on that particular facility, and at what point do we have to really make a big investment?
But as a town, we're also investing, council's also investing in separating storm from
Yeah.
sanitary
Yeah,
as
okay,
well,
fair
which
enough.
all helps.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Just on the motion, I guess the motion was revised, so you just need to refresh your thing, but it's just the removal of that contingent on the award of clean water and wastewater funding. So So, is the mover and seconder, are they okay with just the removal
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, didn't we have a seconder? I thought we had a seconder. Tanner's now the seconder. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And before we move away from Mr. Feener's topics, I just want to thank you and your staff for the hard work. I know you guys put in a lot of hours trying to fix that pipe on King Street. To Councillor McDonald's point, we work so hard to be good stewards of the environment, and when these things happen, it's a bigger step back for us than probably some other communities that don't put the effort into it. So the comment I made was it was heartbreaking for us as a town to do all this work and then have that happen, but these things happen. And I applaud all of you guys and ladies that were down there working away and working with Black McDonald's quick as you could, and for the CIO and yourself to be so open and transparent with the public. It could have been very easy to make that announcement maybe at the end of the news cycle and try to time it or wait until someone said what's in the river, but no, it was, this is what's happened, we're doing our best to fix it. So I applaud you for just getting out ahead of it and getting it done, and being determined to not announce it was fixed until you knew it was 100% fixed, so thank you. Okay, business rising on unfinished business. Second and final reading of the taxi bylaw, previously known as Chapter 11. So we've had is it a non-substantive amendment?
Yes, there's a couple of
Yeah.
non-standard amendments, and we did some public consultation as council asked us to.
Okay, so this is the second reading. Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Fasheer?
I'll make that motion, Your Worship, that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the second reading of the taxi bylaw as presented in document 17-193C, adopt as bylaw, now to be known as Chapter 202, and authorize staff to publish all public notices pursuant to Section 168 of the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Tanner. Discussion? Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Policy 89, fees policy, addition of taxi fare rates, and just for the benefit of the public, we've discussed this before, but where we have fees baked into a bylaw, and any change in fees requires going through the whole first and second reading of the bylaw. As we go through these, we're pulling fees out, putting them in the fees policy so that they can be changed. So this is along those lines of putting them in the fee policy. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Fasheer.
Yes, Your Worship, that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the amended Policy 89, fees, revised to include taxi rates fares as presented in document 17-208A, and that the revised policy be implemented as policy for the Town of Bridgewater effective on publishing of the revised taxi bylaw, formerly known as Chapter 11, and now approved as Chapter
202.
202.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Grace, for that. Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder?
Oh,
Councillor McGinnis. It's only 7:15. Don't fall asleep on me now. Any discussion? Councillor Graves.
So how do we get the fees up? So recently, the taxis went from $6 to $8, which is what, a 35% fee increase. There are some communities that are charging $25 for a license, and there are many, but there's also some that are charging considerably more. Specifically, Yarmouth is charging $100 per company, or per taxi company, or per limousine company, and then they're charging an additional $50 per vehicle that's under that particular company. So the way I see it now, we have an opportunity to certainly raise some income, which is a good thing, bring it a little bit more to cost recovery. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we did recently grant the taxis a 35% fare increase, and I think there's probably enough money to absorb a higher fee structure for taxis. I'm not saying that we do it all at once to go from where we are today to Yarmouth tomorrow, but if there was something that we could work toward, it would be certainly my wish, so.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Only that I concur with Councillor Graves. I think the $25 fee is not realistic.
Councillor Thorburn?
How long has that fee been in effect? Does anybody really know?
22 years.
Long time.
22 years.
Forever.
Yeah, well, then it's about time we had some movement onto it.
Mr. McClellan?
So one of the key purposes of the report in front of us was to get taxis into compliance. Staff felt when we wrote the report to work with the fees that are generally we're seeing with our neighbors or other units. There's an opportunity to move up the fees, and if that's the will of the council, we can. But with the driving purpose of developing this bylaw and fair structure to get compliance, we didn't bring that forward at this point.
So it's something that we'll revisit. Is that what you're-
If you wish.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So,
We wish.
yeah. So we just need to make sure we make a note that it gets added to a future
Review.
agenda. So if someone can just make sure that
Yep.
happens. Thank you.
Question?
Questions being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Request for funding, Bridgewater Baseball Association. So this is actually for a reimbursement of scoreboard. Then this did come to council, and then we sent it to Parks Recreation, who came up with the recommendation of 50% of what was the original request, and then sent it back as a recommendation to council. So what is council's wish? Someone-
I'll make the motion. I move the town council of town of Bridgewater fund the reimbursement of $450 to the Bridgewater Baseball Association for costs associated with replacement of a scoreboard and sign at Kinsman Field, with funds coming from the grants to organizations. Grant is recommended in document 17-175B.
Have a seconder, please.
Second.
Councilor Thorburn?
I'm not sure I'll vote for it, but put it before.
I will add that part of the discussion, and I'll just have to clarify with you to make sure this was followed through, part of the discussion at Parks and Rec was to ensure that along with whatever came out of council was a note to the Baseball Association just asking that in the future they come to the town first before doing the work and then seeking reimbursement, because in this case the sign isn't what we would have done. There's no Town of Bridgewater logo on something that we're now potentially paying for, so that would be a heads up to them. Councilor McDonald.
Would another important note be that, just the safety around it, that, you know, while they've done a lovely job and picked something that is fairly tasteful, somebody else, if we kind of encourage this by assisting with the financial side of it, we are kind of encouraging others to go ahead and put up signage, and in some cases it could be unsafe or distasteful or, you know, any number of things. So it's very important that we be part of that process on town properties, that it's required, not just encouraged.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
I mean, I would suggest that we also, in the document that's going to them with the check, so to speak, assuming it passes, that we ask for our logo to be put on there. All that new signage throughout town has our new logo on it, and I think it would just help meld it in a bit better, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid point. Councilor Frazier.
I just have, for clarification purposes and even in the documentation, as to who owns the signage, maybe whose responsibility for maintaining it comes back to the Baseball Association where they installed it?
I believe that's the understanding. isn't it?
Well, ultimately, it's on our property, it's
I don't
ours,
think
it
we
was
own
done
it.
without our permission.
Yeah,
So we've got it
okay.
at their cost.
So if we take responsibility for it, then I go back to Councilor McDonald's point. If we decide that we are going to take ownership of it, then has someone made sure that it is,
Safely installed?
yeah.
So through the mayor to council, for clarity, this isn't a process staff would recommend going forward. This was a sign that was put up without consultation with staff, without asking our permission to put it on our property. town's property. So we certainly would have had the option to take it down. And that would be within our purview to do if it was the wish of council. You know, through this process, it's gone around a few rings of questions. We're partially funding it. We've made the point with regards to, you know, talking to us before they do it in the future. But I would say that something was distasteful, we would just take it down the next day.
Right.
No question.
Fair enough. Councillor Thorburn.
Yeah, it comes back to something Ann said a few months ago, maybe a year or two ago. It's almost to the point where some of these organizations should be making annual reports to council, so we know actually what's going on and how we can partner with them in upcoming years. And I know for a long time we was requesting financial statements from that association and had a hard difficulty getting some, but maybe we could work some partnerships together there, make this stuff easier to know beforehand and still after the fact.
No, that's a good point. Well, we are doing a recreation study, so perhaps out of that will come information for them. Councillor Graves.
Again, something like this, it's easy to come to the government to ask for money to have it fixed. At the same time, there's great branding opportunities, great partnership opportunities for this particular organization, whether it's a sports store or a combination sports store, restaurant, where they could have paid for the sign outright, had a larger sign and with other things on it. But again, you know, certainly.
Just for clarity, actually, and Nick, who is our signs guy, might be able to clarify, that wouldn't be permitted, correct? We wouldn't allow an advertising sign to be put up?
No, not typically.
So are you saying that, you know, if Mike's Restaurant wants to sponsor this particular sign and it's called Bridgewater Bulldogs Baseball and then with Mike's Restaurant below, that wouldn't be acceptable?
Yeah, there's no clear regulation, and how we approach this or have approached this in the past is as long as it's secondary to the main purpose of the sign. So if there is some sponsorship or you know, if it was donated by a certain group, that commercial component, what we would call the commercial advertising component, has to be secondary and therefore, you know, less than 50% of the signage, but actually very much so. Almost a second thought, like a little strip at the bottom of the sign saying, you know, sign donated by so and so. The banner program follows the same sort of loose rules, but that's how we've approached that in the past. So it's possible. Our sponsorship policy doesn't really get into signage.
Councillor McDonald.
Did this originally come from grants to organizations? Has it been through their criteria and kind of scoring process? I can't remember back to where it initially came from.
Through the mayor to council, this has gone around a few circles. It could go back to grants to organization if council's wish, but it's been to council, it was council's direction to send it to PRC, so that wasn't for staff to send it back to grants to organization.
Okay.
Council wished to.
I just couldn't remember if that's where it originated or not.
Yeah, I think we discussed where to send it, but we decided Parks and Rec, and that's what they're coming back with. Okay. So, yes?
I just want to say, I really commend the initiative that this organization took to improve the field. I don't want to discourage people from taking ownership and pride and trying to improve our facilities. We really want to work with organizations to do that. It has to go through an appropriate process that ensures everyone's safety and that staff can manage what is being put in our public spaces. But I won't be supporting the motion, but it's not because I disapprove of an organization trying to contribute. I really do appreciate where they were coming from on this. It was just the process, and I don't want other organizations to feel that they can kind of go through the same channels. I want everyone to be very clear on the fact that it does need to go through staff before any permanent fixtures are erected in any of our public spaces.
Any further discussion?
Question?
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We'll make sure that the notification goes to them that while this was approved, future work, it's not, that whole easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, that that's not how it works. In the future, come to council first, or come to the town first and staff. Bridgewater Skate Park update. Is someone, Mr. Feener?
Staff want to provide council with an update on the skate park project prior to the 2018-19 budget process. Council's aware the approved budget was $500,000, with council approving contracts for a total of $529,287 net HST. There were other miscellaneous works by our own forces related to the driveway entrance, signage, and some testing at an additional cost of approximately $4,300. With an expected $6,000 credit for landscaping from the concrete contractor, this resulted in an expected expenditure of $528,600 change. In order to have the park functional for this coming year, staff is intending to seek council's approval during the 2018-19 budget process for what we call Phase 1B, which includes some of the landscaping that didn't get finished last year, additional drainage works to alleviate an issue to the neighboring property, some improved parking, signage and a light for a total of $25,000. Current funding for the project totals about $414,908, resulting in a shortfall of approximately $138,692.
I'm a little confused. Sometime last summer, I think it was June or July, we wanted to get the work done to get the skate park underway and constructed, basically. And at that time, I think they had $300,000 or $400,000 committed to it, and they came to council, and council approved
200.
how much?
I think it was 200.
200, and that was by way of a loan, as I understand it. I could be wrong, but the fundraising was going to pay that back to the town. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. That has not been paid back, I suspect. So is this included in your numbers? Or does that affect your numbers? Is that set up as a receivable?
No.
So we didn't lend it to them?
Well, the idea was that they were to continue to fundraise, and, I mean, it's our project, so if the fundraising falls short, it's up to us. I don't know who you'd set a receivable up from, and the auditors would certainly look at the collectability of it.
Well, here's my problem. You see, this project did not go through the budget process last year. It was presented to council after the budget, i.e. June or July after the budget was approved. And so it was not really our project because we did not approve it. And the reason why I bring it up now, I don't want to see this happen in the future with other projects. Because when you don't go through the budget process, which this did not, ever, that concerns me. Because we're now talking $500,000, and my next question would be, there's $145,000 for Phase 2, which I assume will be coming to the town sometime down the road.
Currently, in the draft capital, it's shown as future.
Exactly.
Yes.
But this was never budgeted, not programmed, and I use the term driving the bus. We should be driving the bus before the projects even start. If they're going to start with our approval, then they shouldn't be coming to us after they're half done. It concerns me, because you can get in trouble that way. Because we're going to wind up financing the balance of this. And God bless them, they're working hard, but I know how difficult it is to fundraise. It's not easy. It's a big job. I mean, this is what happened with the LCLC. There was a fundraising shortfall of about $3 $3.6 million. And we wrote that off. Our half of that was $1.8 million. That's a lot of money that we wrote off. We were counting on fundraising. Well, the fundraising wasn't there. And then we repeated the same thing with now a skate park. And so that concerns me if we're going to do business that way going forward. I don't think we should be. We should not have pre-approved or approved that last year when it wasn't even in the budget. Didn't go through the budget process at all. We're going to have a $645,000 project that never ever went through budget. It's not how you do business. We're going to have to finish it now. I don't think we have a choice.
Ms. Carter.
Just to be clear, though, council did approve that it moved forward.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, after the budget process. Yes.
Questions, discussion?
I guess, for me, there's some form of communication issue where either I didn't understand what was happening or it wasn't explained to me clearly what the end result was going to be, because I thought when we approved this that it was put everything back together, grass it all, parking lot, and that was done. And I guess that's where I'm struggling, and that's where I guess I also have problems with, and I mentioned this in an email last week, I think. We're putting everything on the table with regard to our budget number, and every supplier out there knows exactly what that value is, and they can, in essence, often dictate to us what they will do for that particular price. And I find it's a really clear struggle sometimes to define the project and get it done within that amount of money and get it all put back together. I don't know where the.
Councilor McDonald.
To say that I agree that I had a bit of difficulty with the communication as well. I found myself in a position where I was a little bit surprised. And as the chair, going back to a committee of people who had fundraised hundreds of thousands of dollars and telling them, you've got, a couple $100,000 more to go. Surprise. Thank goodness they're a passionate group. And, there's a plan on the table for this year. And kind of an outline for the next couple of years, and they are committed to paying this back. I'm not going to say it's going to be paid off in a year, and that we're going to be looking at phase 2 next year. It's going to take them some time. But everyone that sits at that table is committed to continuing that. They consider this a project where they owe the town the remainder of the balance. They've talked about things like monthly rent parties, where they raise money and it's their rent to the town for this park. So they definitely recognize that. But yeah, our communications need to be, we had a little fumble. We need to make sure that we don't do that again, because you do start to lose some of that passion and support, and we can't afford to lose the fundraisers.
We did, as part of that motion, agree to pay for the shortfall. I remember that motion well. So if we've got to complete this phase and we need additional funding, then we'll have to do the job, or won't be usable even, won't Larry, if it's not finished. So we have to complete phase 1, or we got to start.
I mean, we debated this passionately when it came forward. We knew the tender came in above what we estimated. We knew that we were going to maintain any shortfall on our books. We went to MODL and asked for more money. They said no. Doesn't mean we're not going to go back and ask for more. This is on our books, but that's not a surprise. We knew what we were doing. The project's been a long time
13 years
making, and we wanted to see it complete, and we're going to see it complete. You're not wrong. Your points aren't wrong. So I'm not dismissing your concerns.
No.
Would we be here if we looked at those lands with the LCLC as a regional recreational area, including a library and a skate park, as regional and 50-50, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. But we're not, so we'll just forge ahead and hope that fundraising continues and see where we end up, I guess. Councillor Thurman.
Yeah, well, if I remember correctly, when we did get the funding from the province, it was a little bit short of what we had expected. And I believe at that time we said there might be an opportunity to go back again for another request.
I think we can apply for that every year, can we not?
we can't reapply until we're in phase 2.
Yeah.
Can't apply for the same thing they've already granted us
No.
money for.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
no, not until phase 2.
But phase 2, you could go back
Right.
again. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Councillor McGinnis.
My main issue is not the skate park.
I know.
It's how it should go through the budget process. That's where it should be, okay? I mean, if some organization goes out there and starts another project, and it falls short, and I'll use the beach volleyball court, for instance. They may go out and raise a bunch of money and start the project, and then it's not finished. They come to us, and it's not the budget process, and we pick it up. That's not how you do business.
Playground's another example.
Playground, yes.
You did the same
It's
thing.
got to go through the budget process, in my point of view.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
And just, I guess, it's also not all doom and gloom. Over the past 2 to 3 weeks, there's been a lot of young people over there using that park
Oh, yeah.
already,
I've seen
trudging
them.
through the muck and using it. So it is an asset to the town of Bridgewater. I think it will continue to be an asset and well used, and especially as spring and summer roll around. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just, we got to fix the process.
I agree. The process might have been flawed, but the project is phenomenal. I don't think I've driven by where there haven't been kids there, or adults even. So, I mean, it'll be worth it in the end. Councillor McDonald.
Then I'm going to ask you all to take pictures as you go by, post them on social media, and show local businesses how valuable it is to have their name on it.
Good point.
Can they put that name on a sign? That is the question.
Right, right.
Councillor Grace.
But isn't there a sign there that says "Do not use"? Just playing devil's advocate.
It doesn't.
Listen, I would promote it. I think
No,
we should just take it
I'm
down.
not sure it should be used. No lighting there and that type of.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't worry about the lighting.
There may have been a sign that says "Do not use," but it's not
Yeah,
there
not
anymore.
there.
No, the fence is down in one section.
Okay.
So. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Nope.
No? Okay, keep us posted. Okay, look at that, we're at the end. So we do have an in-camera meeting next door, but if there's no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn? Deputy Mayor Tanner, Councillor Frazier, we are adjourned.